Welcome one, welcome all to my podcast where I focus on your favourite athletes, past, present and future. This is Tokyo 1964. This is 2020 Vision. Hello and welcome to episode 13, part 2 of 2020 Vision. This week at 2020 Vision, we've been focusing on the 1964 games. And the 1964 games was made up of 5,151 athletes, 4,473 men, and 678 women from 93 countries. I am lucky to be speaking with 4 of those athletes that competed for Australia at those games. I will start off with my chat with Ken Roche. Ken Roche competed in the 400 metre hurdles, the 400 metre sprint and the 400 metre relay. Here is my chat with Ken Roche. Can you tell me how you first started on your journey to the Olympics? Where was athletics first picked up for you?
Probably when I was in the junior school, and I just loved sport, athletics, and started off as a high jumper. And as I went through school, changed the events, but I was a high jumper most of my school days, and never ran a 400 metres whilst I was at school. The first one I ran was when I was about 20. And I think one of the most difficult things is picking what events you actually will ultimately be good at. And as you progress through school, your maturity of your body and so forth changes, and likewise your ability at different events.
Yeah, okay.
I started to focus on the 400 metres and 400 metre hurdles basically after I left school.
Was there any particular reason why you chose those?
Just that I found that I was good at them, and I said, mate of mine who could run under 50 seconds for 400 metres. I said, I'd love to be able to do that. And he said, well, just stick behind me and you will. So I did until I hit straight, and then I ran about 48.8, I think, from the first ever. And he got pretty upset with me for beating him. But
No, as you would.
And it's just that you really don't know what you're really good at until you experiment and try with it. That's all.
No, exactly. So how was it qualifying for Tokyo?
Qualifying events, we had the qualifying events were actually in Melbourne, as you're probably aware of, and it's the Australian Championships, and that's what they used as selection trials to the Olympic Games. And I just qualified, got satisfactory qualifications. I was pretty optimistic that I could meet the qualification standards, and I think I had prior to that. And so I would have been very disappointed if I hadn't been able to make the Olympics, because certainly I met the criteria.
No, that's good. So
I ran for the 400 metres and 400 metre hurdles, and qualified for both of those.
So going to Tokyo then, what was it like, the experience? First of all, landing, how'd they treat you?
I can't really recall too much of how they treated us, but our accommodation was very good in the Australian area where we were, and the teammates we were with, they made it pretty good. Certainly you get receptions as you go into Tokyo or into any of the Olympic Games, but I can't recall anything out of the ordinary on our arrival there.
No, that's okay, mate. Yeah, we are thinking quite a while back, but that's okay. Do you mind telling me about the events and what it was like for you on the day?
I'd been running in America earlier in the year, and I was running very well, and I'd beaten the Americans who actually ultimately won the medals, and I got a place. So I was quite hopeful of doing well on the in the Olympics. But when I was running in America and Europe earlier in the year, I injured myself, and I was on my own, as everyone was in those days. We were all poor as church mice, and I never really got over that injuries, and never got back in the full flight. So at Tokyo, I just wasn't at my best, unfortunately, and I got run out in the semi-finals. Just got run out fifth in the semi-finals. Gary Noak, the other Australian, he was in the other semi-final, and he got through to the finals and he came fourth in the final, which was a great effort for him, which was pleasing to see. But Tokyo was a bit of a letdown for me. I think I should have done better, but everyone has a story, and you've got to be able to do it on the day. It's not about whether you could or you should. It doesn't matter what you perform and what you do. And unfortunately, I didn't perform to what I felt I was capable of. But that's life, and you move on from that.
You do move on. Was that your first Olympic experience?
Yes, it was. Oh, yes, as a participant, yeah. But,
yeah.
I saw that I was at the Melbourne Olympics, and as a spectator, 15-year-old kid, and my father was sitting in the stand, and as they were all marching into the stadium, he said, "Down there, son, is the cream of the world's athletes." And I thought, God, one day I'd love to be amongst them. And it was always an ambition of mine to achieve that, and having achieved it, got to Tokyo, gave me an enormous thrill. It was a great thrill.
That's amazing. And did Dad get to see you be one of those cream of the athlete of the crop?
Yes, you did. Yeah, my folks were still alive, and they died just about 20 odd years ago, so they were around for most of my life. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, mate. That's good that he gets to see you walk out, as he was saying those 4 years ago. Yeah, I love that story. Anyway, so did you continue on and compete in other Olympic events or Olympics? Sorry.
No, I didn't. After the Olympics, I was a bit disappointed, and I just finished my engineering degrees, and I decided I'd better start getting a job. And I worked in our family business, and I and disappointed with my results in Tokyo, and the next Olympics was going to be in Mexico with the high altitude, which I didn't think would help me.
Yep.
And I wasn't prepared to just be a participant in another Olympics. If I was going to go to an Olympics, I wanted to do better than that. And I felt that I probably wouldn't, and I thought on balance it was probably better to start building my career, which I did. And then in the end of 1995, I think it was, a lot of my mates were heading off wanting to go to Jamaica, and I thought, gee, I might have a crack at that. And so I then went back into training for a few months and made the team to Jamaica. So that was, but I didn't want to keep going on to Mexico.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Well, what are you doing with yourself now?
Still working. 78 later this year, and we have run a little family business of property development and investments with my brother, and that's a little family office. My children in there, in and out of the place. They run their little businesses from there too. So it's a very, very fulfilling life at this stage, and plenty of activity going. So.
No, definitely. So, is there any words of advice that you'd give for athletes that are up and coming, wanting to make the Olympics, or what would you say?
Always aspire to do the best, and you never know what you're going to be good at until you try it. And my little daughter, which I was very proud of, she got involved in hockey as a youngster, and she actually made the Atlanta Olympics in the hockey roos, and they won a gold medal there. So probably the greatest event in my life in athletics or sport was watching my daughter being presented with a gold medal at the Atlanta Olympics. And that was a great feeling. You can't do better than that.
No, definitely. To see one of your own succeed, I think that kind of overhauls.
She took up hockey.
Yeah.
She could have been a sport in many things, but she took up hockey.
Yeah.
And excelled in that. I think she probably could have made in other sporting activities as well, but certainly that was the one she selected and the one she did achieve in. So it's, I think for young cut-up and youngsters, look at the role models and try to follow them, be influenced by what people do, follow the sporting activities of people, the ones you admire, and set out to achieve, and you don't give in. You have to keep persevering in athletics and any sport, and there's the disappointments and the successes, and that's all got to be taken with a reasonable degree of balance.
It's much like life, isn't it? If you didn't continue on with your engineering and stuff like that, you wouldn't have really been where you are today. So it's good that you can not only take it to sport, but take it with everything else.
Absolutely, and often you'll see now in a lot of the sports people that once they leave their sport, they're lost. And I think certainly in football, where the young footballers are earning big money, certainly in AFL, a couple of $100,000 a year, as in pretty much like teenagers or in early 20s. They play probably, I think the average number of games an AFL footballer plays is something like 30.
Yeah.
And they're heroes for a period, and then suddenly it's all over and they're lost. And I think one of the biggest problems is where do they go from there?
Exactly.
It's certainly up to the football clubs. So I think it's really got to take a big role in assisting kids to transition away from a sport, an elite sport like football, where they're well recognised, high public profile, plenty of money, plenty of girls, plenty of parties, and suddenly it's all over. And they've got no job, no money, and it's a big letdown for them. And I think that's
That's okay. Sounds like you know your stuff about football. You're a fan of any team in particular?
Yeah, my daughter's on the board of St Kilda, so I follow that because she's involved there. So it's enjoy that. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, that's good, mate. Well, hopefully they've got plenty of success in the future. They seem to be heading in a good direction.
not too good this year.
No, well, you know, the only way's up.
I think you're probably right too. I think it's a long way up for them. But anyway, good luck to them.
That's all right. Exactly. And good luck to you for your future. And, of course, your daughters and everyone else in the family. Wish you the best of luck. And thank you very much for joining me for a chat.
Thanks very much, indeed. Good luck. All the best. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
I found Ken Roche to be very inspiring. Not only the fact that he sat in the 1956 games in the crowd and said, I'm going to be one of those athletes one day, but also about his passion towards his daughter's sport and choosing. An amazing man and an amazing father in general. I thank him very much for his chat that he had with me. His results at the games go as follow. So in his 400 metre in the qualifying, he got a 47.43 coming 5th. Quarter-final, he ran 48 seconds flat, coming 7th. And sadly, that's where his time finished in that event. 400 metre hurdles, he ran a 51.5 seconds, coming 2nd in the qualifying. And a semi-final, 50.8, coming 5th, only just missing out there on the final. He also ran the 4x400 metre relay with the team getting a 3-minute 08.2, coming 4th. So yes, and a very exciting chat there with Ken. I will jump into my next chat, which is with Dixie Willis. Sadly, Dixie was unable to compete in the games, but her conversation with me proves that she still enjoyed what she did while she was over there, as well as we hear what her time was like over in Rome. Here is my chat with Dixie Willis. Dixie, thank you very much for joining me for my podcast, 2020 Vision. I'm focusing on the 1964 games, and am I correct in saying that you competed in those games?
I was selected in the team, took part in the opening ceremony, but unfortunately I was ill, later diagnosed with glandular fever, so I wasn't able to compete.
So is that something that we call over there? Not that it was a bad area or anything, but how did that come across?
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Could you just say that again?
I apologise for that. So how did you come about getting glandular fever then?
I don't know where it came from. I had been showing signs of illness during pre-games training, but it's sort of nobody, not even me, we didn't take much notice of it. And it wasn't, in fact, until the day of my heat, I went out to warm up, and I just recall it was a really dismal, rainy day, and I went into the bathroom and wasn't feeling very well, and eventually the team doctor came and had a look at me, and he took one look and just said to me, I don't think you should be out there running today. So that was all that happened. And a few days later, I can't recall exactly, I was just put on an aeroplane and sent back to Australia. And then it wasn't until sometime a bit later, I went back, some weeks, I had been living in Sydney. I went back to my home in Perth, went to my local doctor, did tests, and the glandular fever came up.
That's not good at all, and definitely we're expecting to compete in these games. You would have had your hopes kind of dashed a bit there, which isn't good.
Well, that's right. I think I was in some circles regarded as probably the favourite to win that 800 medal. But let me just add that even though that was very disappointing, I had a very strong, happy memory of the opening ceremony when I marched out with the Australian team as a member of the Australian team. I felt incredible pride and I guess privilege as being part of that team. Now this was the third time that I had actually experienced the opening ceremony, because I went to the Rome Olympics in 1960 and then the Perth Games in 62, and this was my third experience. But for some reason the feeling of pride being part of that team was very, very much stronger, which was really interesting, because then as I explained, I wasn't able to compete. So although, as I said, it was disappointing, I think my strongest memory from Tokyo is just feeling, how good it was to be part of that team.
That's beautiful that you've got that memory there. And I recently just watched the documentary that they did on the games, and I enjoyed seeing everyone marching in. And we don't get that these days. They're all a bit over the place, but that's okay. They're still enjoying it. It was very formal, and yeah, I loved seeing. You can see the look on everyone's faces. So I do have to ask, what was it like for you in the previous Olympics experiences for you then?
Well, that was another interesting experience. I was only 18 at the time. I'd in fact only been competing for about 2 years. I didn't start athletics until I was 16. So I'd only been competing for 2 years. And never been overseas before. And to find myself at the Rome Olympics, of course, was just really quite overwhelming, quite amazing, and totally unexpected. When I went out to run my heat, this was my first experience as being international competition. So I just remember, just excuse me, I'm sort of just trying to remember all.
No, that's okay. I understand.
I took off very quickly and ran to the front, and I think I probably led for most of the race, won the heat, and broke the Olympic record. And although I must verify that by saying the 800 metres for women hadn't been in the Olympic Games for I'm not sure how long, but that was just first time put back in. It wasn't surprising that the record was broken. The final of the 800 metres happened to be on the very next day, and Brenda Jones from Australia was also in the final of that event. Coming into the second lap, I'm not sure exactly how far, maybe about 50 metres from the finish, I was running stride for stride with Shevkova, the Russian athlete who held the world record at the time, and we were in front, running stride for stride, and it began to get very crowded, and I was pushed or sort of ran out of room, moved over, and my foot clipped the curb, and I fell onto the grass. I then got myself back onto the track and jogged over to the line. Now, I don't know if you know this story, but officially I was given a DQ. But a few years later, Trevor Vincent and some of his colleagues went back and had a look at it, researched it, contacted authorities, and they then decided that because even though I had fallen onto the grass, I didn't actually impede anybody, and I got back on the track. So they have now given me an official finishing time and a time, estimated time, but a finishing position. Now, again, I can't quite recall whether it's 8th or 9th because I can't remember how many people were in the field. But anyway, I now have an official place in that event.
That's a beautiful story. I'll have to see if we got any footage of that incident.
So can I just add a bit to that?
No, that's okay. Go on.
And I don't know how much you want to know about this, but the interesting thing about that was that Brenda Jones won the silver medal. So we had both been able to get ourselves into the final, and the situation was with the Australian team at that time that the women's sprinters, Betty Cuthbert, and I just on the top of my head can't remember who else it was, but the women sprinters were expected to do very well. Brenda and I, in fact, were in the team probably because it was the first time it had been in the Games, as I said, after a very long time. So the Australian authorities had been fighting for that. So they sent, and there was very little between myself and Brenda, so they put both of us in the team, but not expecting us to do anything. So the fact that we found ourselves in the final was pretty thrilling for everybody, I think. So, I consider that was a really good result.
And definitely would have it has paved a way for athletes today. We've only just recently had a Catriona Bicep. She's just broken the record Australian record, 44 years it took. So it's definitely we're going stride by stride in that event, and you're one of the people to thank for that.
Yes. Well, I was aware of that. I was alerted to that a couple of days ago. So it's an excellent result for her.
No, definitely. So go on.
I was going to say, and congratulations to Charlene Rendina as well for holding that record for so long. That's just amazing.
Definitely. So I do have a question in regards to what it was like for women of the time when it came to the Olympic Games, having only events it just included or events brought back. What was it like for you to be a part of that?
I wasn't really aware of that. I was just a kid. I didn't know much about athletics, hadn't been running very long. I just went out on the track and ran, and I wasn't aware of, what was going on, of the history of it, and not until after the Olympic Games. Okay.
So, what are your thoughts on that now? Not obviously coming out of it, and how do you feel you should have been treated in regards to how you were?
Now, are you talking about?
Do you believe you should have had the rights in regards to being able to run those events without any hatred towards the fact that women weren't able to or should not have run? Because obviously there's no hatred now. It's all changed. What are your thoughts in regards to that?
Yeah, hatred's a pretty strong word, isn't it?
Yeah, well.
Another word. I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
But I think, no, I don't feel uncomfortable about that. I guess I don't agree with it. But you've got to remember that way back in the time, there was a different thought pattern about women, and even so, I guess that there is still an element of that today. Although with women doing so well in cricket and rugby, etc., the times are changing. But we're talking, how many years ago that it was just that's the way it was then.
Yeah, I understand. And yes, hatred was the wrong word to use. I apologise there. What are you doing with yourself nowadays?
Well, I'm retired.
Yes.
I still keep fit. I do yoga classes, exercise class, spend a couple of days at the gym. I live in a retirement village, so we have a gymnasium here, and I do some work on the treadmill there. I do quite a bit of walking, and apart from that, I'm into craft. We have grandchildren that we visit, so I'm just really enjoying my life. And travel, I must say I travel. We have family in Singapore, Brisbane and Melbourne, so we make sure we travel to see them once or twice a year.
And may I ask, will you be heading over to the games in Tokyo?
No, we're not doing that. No, our travel's mainly confined to family at the moment.
No, that's okay. Well, you had your time over competing in the games, and you may not have been able to compete, but the thought's still there, and everything that you as an athlete succeeded in lives on in our athletes today, which is good.
Yes. Well, I guess I do have a couple of successes. In that I broke the world record in 1962. So that's quite a nice thing to have achieved. And, of course, I won the gold medal at the first Commonwealth Games in 1962 as well.
There we go. So you are a real historical figure for not only women but athletes today. Is there any words of advice that you would give an athlete starting out?
Starting out?
Yes.
Oh, gosh. Oh, goodness me. I haven't really thought about any of this stuff for so long.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just can't think of anything off the top of my head. As soon as I put the phone down, I'll come up with words of wisdom.
Well, you know what? Little said is good in a sense, because we know that you succeeded, and that's really what we should look at in regards to what would push us further. And definitely, I'm hoping that this podcast, this interview here, people listen to and they know that you succeeded, even though, as we've said in Tokyo, things didn't quite go as planned. You still are a part of Australian sporting history, and I thank you very much for chatting with me today. And hopefully, I asked the right questions for you. But yes, again, thank you.
It's okay. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
An amazing story from Dixie there. So her results in Rome are as follows. So she ran her qualifying in that Olympic record, which was 2 minutes 5 seconds 0.9, coming first in there, and then going into the final. Sadly, that trip up, it is now registered as ninth, and we have Trevor Vincent and a group of other guys to thank for that. And it's amazing how the Olympic committee and community can stand up for those sorts of issues and backdate it like that. I was amazed by the fact that actually happened. So it's good that she has a result then. And yes, sadly we did not have a result from Tokyo, but still she had passion, and that's what we're all about here at 2020 Vision. Next up, I have a chat with Bob Vagg. Now Bob was a marathon runner at Tokyo, and we get to hear about all the fun that he had over in the 1964 games. Here he is, Bob Vagg. Bob Vagg, I thank you very much for joining me for a chat on my podcast 2020 Vision. We're here to chat about your experiences at Tokyo 1964. Do you mind starting previous to that and how you qualified? Can you tell us that story?
Certainly. Basically, it was a strange story to some extent. I'd been a good sort of 6 mile, 10,000 metre runner, but when the trials came up in I think they were could have been Sydney or Melbourne, earlier in 1964, I was ill and couldn't compete. So to that extent, I was faced with a decision as to whether sort of will give up my Olympic dream or do something else. But I was also a very good long distance runner. I knew that I'd won two Australian cross country championships, I think 61 and 63. So anyway, and I run a couple of marathons, but one I failed to finish, and the other one I think I finished, but only in a moderate time. So I decided to try in the marathon, and to that extent, I think I won the New South Wales State Championship, and I think Dave Power was very good, but not really a star marathon runner, frankly. I think I beat him. You know, he may not have run. Anyway, the Australian Championship came up at Botany, and I ran quite a good race. I finished 2:24.06. I think I won by about a minute and a bit. And courtesy of that, I got selection to go to Tokyo.
That's amazing, mate. So what was it like heading over there? I've heard from other athletes that they really accepted you as an athlete, and they were all nice. What was your feelings when you got there?
Oh no! Look, the feeling was good. The only longer general problem, and it was all new to me. I was 24, and basically very inexperienced in the marathon running, because as I said, I've hardly run any, and it was really only a stopgap situation. Even though I was confident I could run 26 miles and 385 yards, but I really knew nobody, in the sense I hadn't effectively been coached for a few years. I've been coached on and off for various people over the years, but not in any serious thing like a Fran Stanfield type relationship you had with people down in Melbourne, for example, or Percy Ruddy, who I visited his camp. But Percy was obviously a spectacular character, but I didn't mould him with his disciplinary way of doing things. And in any case, I was living in Sydney, he was in Melbourne. It's a bit hard to work that situation, and even though I wanted to. But no, the village itself, really, life revolved around there in terms of timing over there, around the village. And I went to Shibuya or something like that, which is outside the village, just to really sort of see a little bit of Tokyo. Although, to be honest with you, since the marathon is basically the last athletic event on the program, it's a little bit a pain, because you watch everyone else run. You go to the village every day and have your meals, etc. Or you're in the village, but you go to the canteen thing every day and have the meals. But meanwhile, various athletes are dropping out in all kinds of discipline. They start obviously with the swimming first, and then they finish up, and then you go through the cycle of athletic meets, etc. And those people who compete, they all drop out, and they're all in a holiday mood, more or less, and you sitting there having your meals, which they were quite okay, but they're going to be repetitive naturally. And time goes on, and eventually you come around to the marathon, and there's no heats or anything like that. So you go and away you go, and away I went. And I spoke to the. I don't know what you want to say, but anyway, I ran the first lap, and I said to the New Zealanders who were there, and I knew vaguely. I said, Bill Bailey and somebody else, and I said, "How do you run this thing?" They said, "Vagg, if you don't get up near the front, you've got no chance." So then I took off, and I was fifth at the turn, but I was just about gone by 17 mile. But anyway, I won't. You might want to ask questions about that later. Anyway, as far as the whole experience was only a lovely experience. My wife had come up. She came up, and she was staying in a rear camp, I think they call them, near the village. And I was able to see her sometimes, but not often, and a little bit more after the marathon was over and the games was quickly over, and that was it. And we were, going home.
So it sounds like the marathon runners were the ones that stuck by everyone in the sense they were. I'd like to think that in today's Olympics they'd all be quickly in and out, and you'd have your marathon runners fly in at a later date. But you all stuck together as a team.
Absolutely. I think it was. Look, there was no. I don't think we were in a professional era then, a semi-professional era, where basically you had some sort of prominence over and above the team, and you might be doing other things which paid you some money or something or other, and then you could just, rock up to suit yourself really, rather than the team, but obviously operating under team banner, etc. when you competed, but you had to do what you had to do, and you had to stick around the village, and as I said, towards the end it becomes fairly boring, and particularly the fact that the other people have all had their fun, highs and lows, etc. And of course, obviously, because I was in the village quite a fair amount of time, relatively, the shenanigans of Dawn Fraser and Linda McGill on the flag thing was sort of a bit of an issue in a fairly dull period, because given virtually nobody could speak Japanese, it was really by word of mouth some of these things went around. We didn't have really the internet at that time, so outside information other than we directly observed was, virtually non-existent.
Yes, it is amazing how the internet is good in a sense, and how it's changed how you can get that information quickly, but still the feeling of being told some good news, or if it's bad news in a sense, just by word of mouth is always good. So tell us, you were speaking about that turn, and then you were coming fifth at the time. What was the feeling when you knew you couldn't continue as well as you thought you could going on in that marathon run?
Oh, I'd say slight disappointment, but resignation, because to be honest with you, I didn't know enough about the race, knew very little about the competitors other than Bibi Bakila, who'd won, I think, in Rome. So effectively, I knew virtually nobody. I think I might have known Hill from England. But apart from that, I really didn't know any of the African runners at all. African middle and longer distance runners, that was about the time that they started to break through in big scale on the world scene. So I knew that they were sort of in general terms good, but I didn't know any particular person other than a BB. But there are obviously other countries outside of, I think it was Ethiopia, outside of him. So I just saw all these black people sort of, there, and then there was all plenty of East Europeans and Australians and New Zealanders. And New Zealanders at that stage were the year of Murray Halberg and Peter Snell. So they were recognised certainly in Australia and worldwide for that matter as very good middle distance and long distance runners. So I knew that's part of the reason I spoke to them, and they were happy to speak to me. I think as I went round that back, the first we went down the back straight, so to speak, before we went out to the stadium. But no, they were. I think they beat me by about 4 or 5 places. I didn't see them. I saw them probably about the 20-mile mark. But anyway, no, it was basically resignation, because I knew the body. I'd effectively gone at a pace which was really ridiculous in the sense that the body couldn't. It was 2:10 pace. I think it was through in 65 minutes. But most times the splits are that you might do 65, 70, get 2:15, but I couldn't do 2:15. So I knew I was going too fast, but you get carried away with trying to be up front and hope like hell you can go for a long time. Well, by about 17 miles we'd gone through the 13 mile, and I knew I was gone, but as I say, then there was a hill coming up around about the 17 mile, and by not long after that I was walking, and then I got a second wind, as they say in athletics a bit, and I was able to come in and run quite reasonably okay towards the end and into the stadium, etc., and picked up a few people, passed a few people on the way around the fast lap.
It's the experience that matters, and it's good that the memory has served you well in regards to recalling it, because it is 55 years since. So may I ask, now I know that you're into the stock market and anything, can you compare the stock market to a marathon run?
I don't know. I don't honestly. No, the stock market, well, certainly like a marathon run, because the stock market is really a series, depending, I'm a shorter term trader. Occasionally I hold something for a decent period, decent periods, 12, 18 months. But anyway, no, usually the stock market is short-term conquest, because I seek out information which, particularly in older days, was harder to get from people, and work on that. Plus I'm inquisitive, so I go to meetings with company directors, etc., etc. With the marathon, no, it's one event that's a long way, and you either win or lose. With the stock market, you have, well, as I say, I've been doing it for 61 years, and I like it, and am reasonably successful. And given that, it's completely different. And since it's not a physical situation, to a degree, it's a brain situation. To me, there's very little comparison. In my case, I'd say there's none.
So you do know your stuff in regards to the stock market, and it's good that you found that in your life, and we do need that as athletes. In a sense, we need to know what we are good at, and what we can continue doing. So you sadly you didn't continue on running after the Olympics. You had a year, you were saying?
Yeah, basically I think I ran in the Sydney the Bondi is sort of the run that a lot of people do. I think it's probably about 10 miles or something like that, from Town Hall down to Bondi Beach. I went in that, and you go up a thing called Heartbreak Hill near Rose Bay and Dover Heights, and I went in that. I did 54 minutes or something, which is quite big. I think Trevor Vincent might have even run very good time for that. Some people like D. Costello and that may have run some good times, like 45 or 46 minutes, but I wasn't in that. They were a little bit after me, but I wasn't in that class. So basically, I ran. I would have finished, a reasonable, quite high position, but that was about the last thing, and that was on the road. And basically, I've done quite well on the road when I was running, sort of between about 21 and 24. But basically, I find the road fairly uninteresting, really, to run. I prefer to be out in the countryside, walking over nice grass, gravel tracks, etc., and seeing have a bit of fresh air rather than the road environment, which is the case that most of us who live in the big cities of Sydney or anywhere in the world have to contend with.
Yeah, that's well, it's good that you you found your little thing there with your trades, and
it's more than a little thing; it's a big thing.
Yeah.
So it's well, as I said, I started doing that when I was 18. So I'm 61 years later, and not running on that, but I'm just lucky.
Yeah.
That I found that and stuck with it. I was talking about stocks and shares to people when running around at the Sydney Citizens Round. They'd say, "What do you want to buy? Should I buy?" etc., etc. I'm a licensed dealer now, so meaning I'm registered. I have raised a moderate amount of money with various smaller companies as a licensed dealer, which I still remain. I still do a little bit of stuff there, but not much, frankly, more or less, because for the simple reason that what happens there is that the company promoters and entrepreneurs tend to be in a certain age group, 30 to 50 as a generalisation. And once you gradually, I've reached my use-by date, frankly, in that sense, so they move on to other wheelers and dealers, and I'm no longer the wheeler and dealer. So, time passes on, a bit like, in that sense, there's some relationship to running or even tennis or any sport, because eventually you reach your peak and that thing you're interested in moves on past you because you're not the number 1 or number 10 anymore, etc., etc. Say you're in the 4th grade or the 5th grade and you finish up in some kind of grade, but as long as it keeps my interest, I'm happy to be in that grade.
Thank you very much for joining me today for a chat. I wish you the best of luck with your future. What have you got? Sorry, go on.
And I hope this thing goes. I hope this thing goes well.
Well, thank you very much. Do you have anything planned for the next year or so? Is it a retirement, or where are we heading?
No, I'll never retire. No. I'm going overseas next month for 4 weeks. I do usually each year, and I go on. I've been on a road trip, 5,000 k's recently, Sydney to Rockhampton, to Barcaldine, to Perth, to Moree. And as I get older, I like to see more of I want to see more of Australia, and I'm still, thank goodness, able to drive comfortably, and I like driving. So I like travel, and I like I like travel, and like the stock market, which is one of the good things about the stock market. You can still keep up with it courtesy of that internet we discussed very early in this conversation. Anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wish you the best of luck, and thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
Chat later. Bye. My favourite part of my talk there with Robert was the fact that he wasn't ashamed to ask for help, even partway through a marathon, asking the New Zealanders what the right thing would be to do. It just shows that Olympians, even at the highest level, are not afraid to ask questions. I just thought that was an amazing thing that he did there, and I've got the results here for what Robert achieved on that day, and he ran it in 2 hours 28 minutes and 41 seconds. And sadly, yes, Bob, the New Zealanders did finish in front of you, but it was just a genuine chat with a pure Australian bloke, and that's what they are. I just love the fact that he was really straightforward with what he achieved on that day and what he wanted to achieve. So yes, thank you very much, Robert, for that chat. I now go into my last chat. One of the first women to compete in a 400-metre final at an Olympics. Here is my chat with Judy Pollock. Tell me how you first began as an athlete.
Well, I guess, Jordan, it was when I was at school, primary school in Mount Macedon. My parents had a guest house, and we used to climb up the mountain to the memorial cross at the top of the mountain. And I was sort of the guide up the bridle track of all the guests. And I think I used to leave them behind because I'd almost run up the mountain, and eventually they'd come. So I guess that started my love of the outdoors and running. And then when I went to high school, I showed promise as an athlete, just in flat races, nothing else. And my father mowed a track in the paddock for me, and I used to do a bit of running on that. Didn't have any spikes or blocks, had no idea what they were. And eventually I went to, my mum started a netball team up there. And she said to me, would I like to go to Melbourne and play netball? And I said, yes, that'd be lovely. So I went to Melbourne and played netball, and I eventually finished up in the Victorian under-21 netball team. And by that time I'd started doing a bit more running, so I had to decide between netball and athletics, according to my coach, Henry Schubert. So I went with the athletics. And I guess it started from there, really, from school. I came down in probably 1957 to run in Melbourne at the university grounds they ran then. My mum said to me that they ran races every day, every Saturday, and I said, well, I didn't know that. So she said, well, would you like to go? And I said, yes, I would. So she got me a pair of spikes made by Sweeney, beautiful hand leather ones. And I fronted up for my first race against the metropolitan junior people. And they said to me, have you got starting blocks? And I said, no, what are they? And so they showed me how to use them. And I said, righto. So off I went, and unbeknown to me, I think the state junior champion at that stage. So I guess that was the start of it. People started to look and take notice when I did that in my first sprint. So that was the beginning of my athletics.
And so that actually, well, you did have the opportunity to go play netball, but yet you got an Olympics berth out of it. Do you mind explaining how you qualified for those Olympics in Tokyo?
Well, that was a very tough time, really, because there were three of us, Betty Cuthbert and Dixie Willis and myself, who were all running 400s. And in our day, the teams were very small, and you had 11 women to go to Tokyo in 64. And in order to get into that team, they actually made Betty and Dixie and I run against each other 3 times, very arduously 400-metre runs at different meetings. And as it turned out, Betty won one, Dixie won one, and I won one. So I suppose that was a bit of a conundrum then, who they were going to pick. And fortunately, I got chosen, really, as the underdog, I guess. And, of course, that was a very exciting time, my first international team. Never been out of the country, really. And I was very excited about that. And it was a hard road to get into that team. It was a wonderful privilege and joy for me to be there.
And what was it like in regards to the people of Tokyo? How were you accepted as athletes?
Oh, wonderful. The Japanese people were amazing. They welcomed us with open arms. I guess I had thought only briefly, because my uncle was a prisoner of war in World War II, and the Japanese people had probably been in my psyche as a young child. And so when I was going to Tokyo, I thought, well, this will be interesting to see what these people have done since World War II. And they were very proud and peace-loving and welcoming to the whole of the world in 64. Arriving at the village or everywhere we went in buses, they'd be sitting outside, lining the road, all the school children, the little ones as well. I don't think any of them went to school, and they'd be clapping and cheering, even if we were just going to the training track. So the people of Japan were absolutely amazing. And I remember after my event, the final actually, I came back to my room and there were presents on the bed from people I'd never heard of. They just bring them in because you do well, and they were so pleased for you. And then afterwards I did a bit of shopping after I'd competed, and going to shops, and they give you presents because they recognised you straight away. So they were a very generous group of people. And I went over for the 50th anniversary to Tokyo as a guest, and again the same thing happened. They were very welcoming and delighted to see us back after all those years.
Will you be heading over there next year to the 2020 games?
No, I don't think so, Jordan.
No, that's okay.
Not at this stage, I'm not going, no.
Well, your footsteps still remain since 64, so you led the way for the athletes that are going to be running today.
I beg your pardon, I didn't get that, Jordan.
No, it's okay. You led the athletes of today. Your footsteps will still stay in the soil, I reckon, and it's definitely it's amazing to be talking with someone like yourself. You got to run alongside the great Betty Cuthbert.
Yes.
Do you mind talking me through the race? The whole events that you had to do. You would have had to have done your semi-finals and all that sort of stuff. Can you talk us through the races?
Yes, well, we had 2 heats and semi-finals and then finals. And really, being my first international competition,
a little bit different to what happens nowadays. The heats of the 400 was the first time I'd ever raced internationally. So that was pretty scary at the time, but I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. And I qualified for the semi-final and then again for the final. And I remember on the final day being very, very nervous, as I was with all of the runs really. And Betty and I were just warming up together, and unbeknown to me, my coach Henry Schubert and Percy Serity had a few little words before we ran. Percy saying that he thought women shouldn't run 400. It was too far for them and they wouldn't do any good. And of course Henry stood up for me, being my coach, and for Betty too, because he was very fond of Betty, and we did a bit of training together, and he knew her coach. And I have to say, after we'd run, Percy did read his words and apologised to my coach Henry Schubert that he was wrong about not being able to women to run 400 metres. And so from then on, of course, we've proved them far wrong. We can run as many distances as the men can.
Yeah, definitely.
We just didn't have the opportunity in those days. And the same with the 800 too. They thought it was too far for women to run. But Henry Schubert, my coach, was an instigator, or he paved the way for 400 metre and 800 metre running in the world, really, because he knew the training methods and really put them in for myself in particular, over 400, and showed the world that we certainly could run 400s, and we could run many, many of them continuously. So he was certainly a very, very forward-thinking coach in those days for women athletes in particular.
He obviously had the right frame of mind and knew exactly what you were all capable of. Do you keep up with athletics today?
I follow a bit of it on the television, and I don't know all the youngsters that are in it now, but I certainly watch all the interesting parts and follow it as much as I can. But,
well, we've just had a late... Sorry, go on.
I just follow a lot of my grandchildren's sports now, and that keeps me very interested. I still do that sort of thing, and I did a park run this morning, so I'm still interested in athletics, and I still love running. I just wish I could continue to run, but it gets very difficult after a while when you get old.
No, that's okay.
Nothing works as well as it used to.
Oh well, the memories are still there, and so what else do you do? What else do you do with yourself rather than the park runs?
Well, I'm still bike riding. I've taken up bike riding, so I do a lot of bike riding. A small amount of swimming. Never been a great swimmer, but I do go and swim because it's a different form of exercise, and I do a lot of walking. So that keeps me healthy and well, fortunately. Yes.
That's good.
I hope I'll stay healthy for a few more years yet.
Oh, more than a few. Now, I've got to ask one more question. Is there any words of advice that you would give to up-and-coming athletes that are coming through? If you were ever asked, what would you tell them?
Well, they have certainly had wonderful opportunities to grasp now. When I compare, I know it's not much use comparing because everything changes as time goes on. But in my time, we had to hold down a full-time job, and I had a family as well, and a husband, of course, and I had children, and we had other things, or I had other things that occupied my time as well as athletics. But there would be many a time when I thought, I wish I didn't have to work today so I could either have a rest or do a bit of extra training. So those opportunities are before them now, and they don't always have to have another job to maintain themselves. So if you're on some sort of a retainer and you have the opportunity, make the most of it, because you're very fortunate to have those things to support your career as you go along. and plenty of time for the other things. But at the same time, I would say, don't give up study. If you can go and get a degree or something, or do uni, or do some sort of course, have that in the background, because when you leave your chosen sport, my goodness, there becomes a very big gap in your life. If you have nothing else, it's very hard to adjust to, I would say. In fact, I know it is. But fortunately, I had my work, and I had 2 children at that stage, so there was plenty to occupy myself after I finished. But in the meantime, you can't just do athletics and nothing else. You must have other interests. Like, grab every opportunity you get and compete as often as you can, and always put your best foot forward. That's the main thing.
That's what we do with our running, and we take it literally, don't we? We've got to put that one foot in front of the other, and we can look at life like that.
Exactly, yes. That all helps. It's part of being an athlete, and to enjoy the people around you and to enjoy the people that you meet on the journey too. We've all got wonderful friends overseas that we don't see often, but we know they're there, and you make a wonderful life for yourself as a young person, but then there are lots of opportunities after you've finished your sport too.
I thank you very much for joining me today for a chat, taking the time out of your day. I wish you the best of luck with your bike riding and your park runs. I'll try and do a couple myself, but I'm pretty sure you might be able to beat me, I reckon.
I don't think so, Jordan.
We'll have to try next time I'm in your neck of the woods. Okay, well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Jordan.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
From a racetrack built by Dad in the backyard to Tokyo 1964. What an amazing chat with Judy Pollock. An amazing story that she had there, especially the fact that she got to run alongside the great Betty Cuthbert. So her results are as follows. In Tokyo 1964, she ran the 400 metre, qualifying 53.8 seconds, coming second in that race. In her semi-final, 53.39, coming first in that race. And in her final, a 53.4, running third. So there we have episode 13, part 2 of 2020 Vision. It's been an amazing week interviewing 6 athletes all up from the 1964 games. If you haven't yet, please check out my interviews that I did with Rob Lay and Trevor Vincent. I'll release those on the day which represented the 1 year to go to Tokyo 2020. Thanks for listening to 2020 Vision. Join me next week. Who knows who we're going to get. Thank you for listening to another episode of 2020 Vision. If you want to find us elsewhere, go to Podbean, YouTube, or Spotify and type in 2020 Vision. You can also find us on Facebook. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.